Welcome back. I hope that you've had a great week. I can't wait to jump into today's study. Last week we started covering apologetics, with just a quick review is the study of defending your faith. And defending your faith is not so that you can go and get into arguments with people, and it's not even necessarily to go and convince someone to come over to your side. Instead, we are looking at it as a tool to further ground you in what it is that you believe. And if someone just so happens to come along and challenge you, that you feel like you are on steady ground entering into a conversation with them. So here's the key word: conversation. I will warn you that some people are not looking to have a conversation with you. They're looking to maybe prove a point or trick you, or maybe even get some of their own anger and frustration out about God towards you. If you get to that point, what I would suggest is you follow what the Bible says, and just remember that to someone who isn't in this walk, these things are going to seem silly. They're going to appear foolish, and that's okay. You can take a step back, and maybe they're not ready at that point for a conversation. It's not a loss. Love them, have a relationship with them, but it's not the time for this type of conversation. This is conversation for people who are looking for answers or looking to exchange ideas. The world of apologetics is huge, and there's so many pieces to cover. And I want to remind you that I am a student here. So I'm just sharing pieces of information that I've been learning with you in hopes that you will get really curious and just start doing your own digging for yourself. So week by week, I'm just going to be picking one small aspect that I remember having questions about when I was starting off learning about all of this. And then hopefully you go off and do your own study, and then you come back knowing way more than I do. But today we're going to be focusing on this main question: why do I believe there is a God? So this is me, Maxine. And so these are some of the proofs, some of the things that I have studied that have made a significant wave in my heart that helps me to believe that yes, in fact, there is a God. Now, I mentioned in my previous video that my number one reason that I believe there's a God is because I had an experience, right? I had an encounter. So there is an emotional and relational aspect to that for sure. But for my brain that wants to hold on to the rational and to the logical, this is where these other kind of studies were helpful for me to understand what it is that I believe. Deep down, we all have a God-shaped vacuum waiting in us to be filled. I believe that God put this in us so that we would all go out and seek Him. You know that gnawing in you that searches for meaning and for purpose in life? Or that feeling when you haven't accomplished what you feel like your purpose is, or where you're not working towards your purpose? Or worse, when someone loses the idea of meaning in their life or purpose in their life? That can be really scary. And that's because God put this wanting in us so that we would go out and seek Him. That is a signal of our Creator. I'm not alone in this idea. For most of our existence, when we trace back humans, we see that they worshipped ancient gods, right? They were looking to make sense of the world. They were looking to fill that vacuum that God left there. So the 4 principles I kind of want to look at today regarding on why I believe that God exists are the following. Number 1, every creation has a creator. Look, you would never walk up to a beautiful painting and assume that it just appeared out of thin air, right? You would also never assume that that painting that just appeared out of thin air could then create another painting, right? Out of that painting is not going to come some little paintbrush and create another painting. Why? Because it's inanimate. Right? It's inanimate, and a non-living object cannot give birth or create something that is living, right? So when I look at the humans and I look at trees or flowers or birds, it's just all of nature to me, I see the external complexity and beauty of it. And I'm always in awe, and it makes me see the Creator. I know that these things were created. They had a beginning somewhere. And so that makes me think that someone had to have created it. The second idea that I want to talk about is that I do believe that every cause has an effect. And if there is an effect, that means there was a cause. So if you're struggling right now to believe in creationism, which is that, or intelligent design, which is the idea that God created the heavens and the earth and the universe basically in 7 days versus, the Big Bang Theory, right? Which is that everything kind of exploded into being at one point. I believe that every effect has a cause. So for example, if you are sitting in your room right now and a brick flies through the window, right? Most of us wouldn't just look at the brick on the floor and be like, a brick, thanks. Many of us would actually get up, run over to the brick, take a look, go look at the window, maybe go out to see who threw the brick, right? And then there'd be a bunch of other actions after that. But most of us would want to know where this brick came from. How did it get there? Again, we wouldn't assume that it just landed out of there out of thin air. So I take this same concept and apply it to our universe. I don't believe that our universe came out of thin air. And I think that science has done a really great job actually of catching up to the Bible in this thought. Even at the furthest point of study, they still don't have the cause for the Big Bang. They know that maybe something happened and it caused all of this, but they don't know what caused the cause, right? So some of you might be wondering, and this was definitely one of my biggest questions when I was in this walk, well, if every creation has a creator and every cause has an effect, then what created God or what caused God? And so for some of you, the answer I give is going to be deeply satisfying and it's enough. It was enough for me. And for some of you, you might want to be doing more digging. Great, continue to do that. But here it is. God is God. He is the uncreated being. He was never created because he always was. If he was in fact created, then guess what? He wouldn't be God. There has to be an uncreated creator. I believe that God had no beginning because God is eternal. He always was. So some of you might be saying, well, why can't the universe be eternal? Well, science has proven that it's not. We know for a fact that the universe has a definitive beginning, and we also know that we're racing towards an end, which is kind of scary to think about. And hopefully it's not coming anytime soon. But we know these things, so therefore we know the universe is not eternal, which means that something created the universe. I choose to call that something God. So everything that had a beginning has a cause. The universe, we know, has a beginning. So the universe had to have had a cause, and that cause is God. So just to repeat, God is the first uncaused first cause, right? Who created everything that exists. So he is eternal, he is the originator, and he is the creator. So the third point that has been really convincing to me may sound a little bit like the creation one, but it is that every design has a designer. So yes, from the outside external perspective, right, aesthetically, as we're looking at all of the universe, we see that things have a design, right? And so when I look at outside, I'm looking at a tree right now, it's so beautifully shaped. It has a particular design. In fact, things have designs and that we can recognize them even when they don't look the same. So we can know that a small tree is the same as a big tree, or a dog that has a lot of fur versus a dog who doesn't have a lot of fur. You still know that it's a dog because it has an inherent design in it, right? So from an external aesthetic, I realize that our universe has a specific and complex design. Let me give you another example. Internally, if you were to open up your iPhone, what you would see is a bunch of gears. They would see a bunch of things that maybe you don't understand how they work. It's a complex machine on the inside, right? You would never look at a phone like this and think it just spontaneously combusted onto the scene. You know, someone must have designed it to work the way that it does. Our DNA is similar to this. DNA is so complex. Scientists describe it as it being a genetic code. Now that word code is really important. If there is a code, it means that there was an encoder. Someone wrote the code. It's a piece of communication. And in any other aspect of your life, if you found a piece of communication, right, would you not assume that someone was communicating? It had to come from somewhere. So the point here is that every design has a designer. Every complex design has a designer. The universe has a highly complex design. If we were off by even a meter, an inch, a degree, we would cease to be here on this earth. Therefore, the universe has a designer. And again, I call that designer God. Maybe you call it something different. Finally, The reason that I believe God exists is because every law has a lawgiver, and our world is full of laws. Now, there are universal laws, things that we all do. For example, when you see someone smiling, we all know, right, that someone is having some type of good feeling or joy for the most part. If you see someone crying, you would assume that they were emotional of some sort, right? So we have these sort of universal laws. We also have laws of theory, right? Like gravity, what goes up must come down, things like that. But other than that, we have our moral laws. Now, here's the thing. Check back to the first video where I talk a little bit about moral relativism. And so I know that we're living in a society right now where truth kind of is on the sliding scale. However, that does not do anything to negate the fact that we have always had moral laws, right? Since the beginning of time, there's always been something that's right and wrong. Now, whether that right and wrong thing has shifted because of the perspective, that's a different conversation. But still, for the most part, we know that something is wrong because we ourselves don't like the feeling of it. So even the worst people that you can think of, whoever you think is a bad person in your mind, they themselves have an idea of what is good and what is wrong, even if it's off. And what I'm saying is that feeling, our ability to understand that there are moral complications to our life here on earth, that there is right and that there is wrong, implies that there is a moral law giver, okay? And that there is an objective moral law. Therefore, there has to be an objective moral giver, right? So this is what I believe. I believe that the fact that you can get so angry and upset at some things, the fact that you can go on Facebook and feel that anger and that heat in your heart because someone has a different opinion than you, right? That feeling right there is actually pointing towards the fact that you were created in the image of God, that you have the ability to decipher between right and wrong, and that you are a moral creation. Therefore, you have a moral creator. And so that is a quick sum up of some of the reasons and arguments that I believe that God does exist. Now you can go ahead and do some more research for yourself, do some digging there. Every cause has an effect, every creation has a creator, every design has a designer, and every law has a lawgiver. Hey, if you're loving these videos, take a moment to subscribe. It really does help for us to reach out to different people and hear the message. And also share it. If you like it, share it. And follow us on Instagram at strongwomen_of_God. Hope that was some food for thought, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.